Hello, hello. So thank you for joining me here when you get here, whether it's on replay or you're here right now, for Finding Joy Live. It is such a pleasure for me to get to be here with you. And in a few minutes, I am going to be talking to Allyn Reid about how our soul and our joy are connected. But before we get there, I really want to talk to you guys about what joy is because everybody has a different definition of it. I found out just recently. It seems like a universal experience, right? It feels like, oh no, we all know what joy is, except that the nuances of what that feels like is internal. It's all internal. So I thought maybe we could just take a few minutes here. And if you're hearing this, when you're hearing this, please put in the comments what you think joy feels like. What is joy to you? And then again at the end of when we talk about it, because I love to know, like, are we speaking the same language, and how are we shifting our understandings just by being together? So I know I may have told you this before, but did you know they did a study that when two people speak to one another, they don't have to be in the same room or anything, that their brain waves start to synchronize. And so you can more easily think the thought that someone else is thinking than you can when you're by yourself reaching for that thought. So this is the power of collective thought, and that's why I ask you to participate, not just in your mind, but also through your fingers, right? Let us know what's going on up there. So joy. So joy for me, a lot of people say, actually, let's start there. A lot of people say joy is that bubbly feeling that you get, that woo, you happy, happy, happy feeling, right? But for me, joy is much, much deeper than that. And I think you should consider this redefinition, right? Because a lot of times, let's go to happiness for a minute and just kind of look at happiness. Happiness is often used, because we have people talking about it now, in a way that describes how are we living? What are we doing? How are we living? Are we satisfied? Are we content? Is our life relatively easy? Is it filled with ease? Do we feel like everything's going to be okay? That those are the basis for how we find happiness, how we find happiness in our job, in our pay scale, in our marriages, right? All of the things that we're sort of measuring happiness. And so often people say, okay, so joy must be that just temporary bubbly thing that happens. However, I want to tell you a story. I was in a Gyan yoga class. So I practice many different types of meditation and yoga. And this particular type of meditation and yoga is really, it's guided by somebody I think is brilliant. And if you're interested in it, you should go to gyanyoganow.com or .net and look up Dr. Manik, because he is brilliant. But I was in this class and we were essentially in a state of meditation. And as time went on, I felt my face move. I felt my face smile. And when we were finished with that segment, he said to me, "What was that? What was that went across your face?" And I said, "Oh, I felt really good. It was wonderful. It felt wonderful. I felt full and large, and I felt in this very big way." And he said, "That is joy. And that is accessible to you at any time." And that really changed my world. It changed my world entirely, because I was not in a state of life where I was bubbly. I wasn't in a state in that moment where I was bubbly even. And people have described me as bubbly, so I get that I have a lot of energy coursing through here, right? But it was a moment where I understood that if I want to feel good, even though I'm under any circumstances, even though whatever is happening, then I am going to have to be willing to get into a state where I can access joy and then actually do the work to access it. So I am going to leave it there. Please, as I have said, if you're listening now or on replay, I want you to go ahead and write down, what did you think about what joy is at the beginning? What do you think about how you think joy exists in your life now, right? What does it mean to you? Are you going to shift your relationship to joy? What is that willingness? Anything you want to write. I love interacting with people. Okay. So I am so pleased to have with me today Allyn Reid, and we are going to talk about how your soul operating system increases your spark of joy. And I cannot wait to hear about this. We will all be getting a big education. Welcome, Allyn.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your patience. I super appreciate it.
Yeah. No, super glad you're here. I'm really glad you're here. It's great. So I read your materials about soul operating system, and I thought, now this is a different way of looking at things. So let's talk a little bit about what that first part means before we get to how does it impact your spark of joy.
Yes. So the soul operating system is a reference to the soul, which is the foundation of our existence. We existed as souls first before we have our bodies, we inhabited these physical bodies of ours. And it's what animates us, it's what gives us our signature. It's as unique as our fingerprint. Everyone's soul is different. And I think that the only place I've seen it physically reflected, biologically reflected, actually it would be the more correct way, would be the soles of our feet and our fingerprints. But we do have it. It is an energetic body. And I find that we have a chronic condition of not knowing it's there. It's like one of those things we should have been taught in kindergarten. Remember that song? Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. It should have been soul, head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
I love
and so
that.
we miss this like simple core thing that actually escalates to then absence of knowing how to work with it and all the things we can do with it. And especially when it comes to your work, joy, it's a really major piece because we are heavily reliant as a default, because we don't know much about our souls. We're heavily reliant on our moods and our minds and our hearts because of it. So that's, in short,
an interesting thing you bring up, that we aren't taught that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we put soul, the concept of soul, in a category of religion. So that's really interesting, right? We've sort of cut these things apart and said, like, this physical stuff, this we're going to talk about that in school, and this religious stuff we're not going to talk about because there are lots and lots of different opinions about that. But there is this space that's between those two things that isn't religious, in that it's not looking at the soul through a certain lens. It's not looking at behavior and how that relates to good and bad and things like that. That religion often does. But there's that space that is, I like to say, the relationship between you and you.
Yes.
But often people don't know what I'm talking about.
You got it. You know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. So soul is really, really important. So often I get this question, and I'd love to hear your take on it. What is the difference between soul and spirit?
I do use them interchangeably.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. It's very similar.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah.
One and the same, actually. If not, I would say soul is the individualized aspect of you. There's two major categories inside soul. So I really, by the way, love your point about like this has become a concept instead of like a body part. Something that's very much here and with us all the time. And it's like saying, because we can't see it, it's not real. And I'm like, well, none of us can see air, but like we'll all be dead without it. So it is that much gravitas that it needs to have. But anyway, so to answer your question, there are two different major categories of the soul, and half of it is the spirit side, and half of it is the one that's individuated to you in this lifetime. And so the half of it is what's kind of, those things like we're all connected, we're all one, sort of the broad overstrokes around consciousness as a collective. That is, there's so much material around it. Actually, I find there's a lot of mystics and shamans and, even modern day spiritual leaders. Uh, and so we say spirit, like when I refer to it as spirit, it's more that our belongingness to an ecology. When I say soul, I'm talking about more of our individual journeys here. And that's unique to us. We're all configured differently. We all came in with your soul and my soul is not the same, the way that your fingerprints and my fingerprint is not the same. So, and that is the part that I think there's even less material on it. So this is the part where I invite people, to do the work, because there's so much joy actually in finding out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a very special relationship to death. And so I am so tempted to go into that topic with you
Go
because
for
it
it.
would be a really interesting conversation. But I don't want to get lost, right? I don't want to get lost because I think we have such a short period of time here today that I want to make sure that we really get to this thing that we're doing in this lifetime, in our bodies, having this physical experience in the world, and finding ways to bring in not just the spark of joy, right? Because we think about that spark, it's the thing that starts the engine, right? It's the beginning of the flame, right?
Mhm.
So when we have that spark of joy, fantastic, because often people have damped down that light in them, but also the continuation and the growth of joy. So let's talk a little bit about this soul operating system and how it can contribute to that.
We are all already wired for joy, but not mental wiredness. I'm talking about on a soul and spirit configuration layer. And so our experiences in our lives that we record into our body, physical bodies and our psychology, oftentimes, what's the word, muffle that, or does not allow for that to exist. I've certainly had that in my life. Like I was an immigrant. I came here with, like, my mom was a single parent and she had 3 kids, and we had like $100 to her name. Not even our name, it's her name. and and coming here, it was about survival and doing well in school so you can get the job and get the all the things that you will be comfortable. Well, nothing in that equation says you do it with joy. Like there's no priority there for it. Now, luckily, I've had my earlier experience being like really a lot in nature, spending lots of time just, in the 80s, still pretty unplugged. And I read my books and I ran around.
People didn't have home computers in the
Yeah.
80s. Just to give it
So,
perspective for some of our
right,
listeners, there
right.
was no such thing as a home computer until almost the mid 90s.
Yeah. What y'all think is like a novelty, like rustic,
Yeah, yeah,
was the
yeah,
normal.
yeah. Or didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so there's even this element, even for me, that as I moved through my life and reached all the things and arrived at all the things I ever wanted to arrive and reached all my dreams to the point I ran out of dreams, that going back to that space of joy was anticlimactic. It was almost like, oh, this is what I was missing? Like, well, shoot. Okay. I gotta rethink this whole thing over. And so there's that aspect of being so caught up in the things you want and the pursuit of whatever it is your definition is of success, that it's rare for people to have to put joy on there. It's almost like you think about it after. It's like this reward thing instead of a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's extra. It's extra.
Yeah.
You have to do the work. Oh, you could be happy if you want to.
And
But
yet,
either way, right?
and so the
Yeah.
difference of like soul operating system being engaged is like you do still function. We're still in this 3D world, and there are things, tasks that you will do because you need them. You need to do them in order to get your life's work done. Uh, and you will find that, and I, especially me, I've found that I do them with joy. Things that I'd normally be like, that's not what I do. That's not my strength. Like, it's not about strengths and weaknesses. It's like, I know this thing is just part of what I'm supposed to be doing in life. And like, I'm right here. I'm doing nothing. I can do it right now. It matters not that it's my strength or weakness. It just needs to happen. And I find I'm pretty happy doing it, which is really surprising. But that's like one of those experiences that you have with the soul operating system that's like driving your existence versus your mind or your emotions.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me how much um, undetectable resistance we have. Right? It is obviously detectable, but it doesn't feel detectable in the moment. It feels
Yeah.
like the the tape is just running, and
Yes.
I don't feel like doing the thing. And so that's the way it is. And then you realize that if you just stop having resistance to it, if you just say, oh, I am doing the thing. Oh, I am doing the thing. Oh, I am doing the thing. Okay, I'm doing the thing. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you're doing the thing and it isn't a big deal in your life. I am a sci-fi fan,
Ooh,
and in
love
one
sci-fi.
of the yeah, me too. And one of the I love the anything outer space is super
Mm-hmm.
fun, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the movies is Galaxy Quest. It's a very funny movie. It's an old movie, and in this movie, there's this moment that really shifted my perspective on this exact thing that we're talking about. Is like, how do we just unclamp from the things we're clamped onto, right? That we don't feel like doing, and do them with some amount of joy or disregard, right? Enough disregard that we're still in joy. And there's a kid like helping the spaceship land, and he's 15 years old or something. His mother keeps yelling at him to go do the garbage, put the garbage out, and he's literally saving these people's lives, right? But he's a kid and he's upstairs in his room, and what would his parents know about, like, that's not what kids do. They play games, right?
Yeah.
And so eventually she yells at him enough and says, you got to do it right now. And he runs down the stairs, he does the thing, he runs back up, he continues doing what he's doing, and there's complete disregard for whatever that was. It was like, I did the thing, it's done, it's over, I moved on. My life is not about that I don't want to be in this life. My life is about that I am in this life and I like it.
Indeed.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I'd like to add to that that resistance is information. And so it's not that I don't have resistance, but operating from the soul means that there's a lot of your talents that come alongside with it, and that you aren't really, as you say, this great word actually, it's like undetectable. So I actually pay attention to resistance because it's usually there's information for me there. And it's because, and I'll usually find out that there's some sort of piece missing that I need, that some factor, maybe a person that's tied to the project, is actually having some sort of whatever it is, that it's just that I feel it in the spirit of the project, their points of view about it. And it's a matter of me contacting them, being like checking in and, hey, how was that? And now that I know that, then the whole thing clears, regardless of what that person thinks. But usually, resistance has a ton of information beyond fear, because it isn't actually always fear, as much as an unknown that needs to be sorted out.
Mm.
And And so once that happens, and you're okay with whatever this unknown is, most people are very afraid to explore in the unknown, but it really means like nothing. It's just information, right? uh, and our minds, our subconscious or our soul is really smart. It knows things without us knowing.
Mm.
But the mind will create a resistance because there's not clarity. It's very linear. It wants to see like all the little steps in order to move forward. So there is this management that has to happen between the soul and the mind. And so and that's what takes off for me any kind of resistance or joy, or resistance to joy when it comes to being here on earth.
Nice, nice, nice. So often when we talk about finding your spark of joy, people say, "Oh yeah, yeah, no, I got this. I go running and I find it. I do a thing and then I get the reward of it."
Okay.
Right? But
I same
that's not really
practice.
our
Yep.
relationship to joy. It's not our relationship to emotions in general, but people don't aren't big on that idea. But it really isn't our relationship to emotions or to joy, right? Because we can be
Mhm.
choosing what's happening in our bodies
Mhm.
and directing from that higher level that you're talking about, that soul level, and saying, okay, this is the experience I am choosing. And I don't really have to go and meditate for it. And I don't really have to go and run or do any of the things that we say to do. You look like you'd rather not run.
I hate meditating.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
a meditator.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, so this question I often hear from people to me is, what do you do to get the joy? And my answer is very much about focus and very little about doing something. Right. Right. So tell me, do you face that kind of question? And what is your answer to it?
I romanticize every little thing in my life. So I have this thing where I really take pleasure, like immense amount of pleasure with pestering people around me and just like annoying them. So as when I wake up, I'm generally tickling my partner while he's still asleep. It drives him up a wall, but it cracks me up. That's, how I wake up. I'm
That's
generally
funny.
like tickling him. I will hop over to my son's room, and if he's awake, I will figure out a way to annoy him and get mad, and I'm like ha 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 ha, and then I'll go find, start making lunch. And so it really does not have to be conventional tactics. I find that my mischief is can easily be turned unproductive if I don't take charge of it myself, if I don't take charge of the expression of it. And so I just have that. That's unique to me. I don't think everybody's got a dash of mischief in them.
Say something more about that. Can be unproductive. What did you mean by that?
So, uh, well, I guess we could bring it back to like teenage years, like I masterminded a hazing of the entire freshman class. Mischief, a
So
whole
you're a
week's worth.
prankster. You're a
Yeah,
prankster. That's
it's
your
like
thing. So
unproductive,
okay, okay. All right.
right? So
So
that
you're
would be
saying you rein it
unproductive
in a
part.
little. You rein it in a little. You find
Yes,
ways that aren't harmful to others
right.
to practice your mischief. Okay. All
I
right.
like an
All
element
right.
of play. There, at one point, at any time of the day, there's some sort of song and dance that will come out. There will be a game that will break out, some sort of competitive thing, because all of us have a competitive nature. We're very into Rummy, and we're very into the game sequence right now. Like these things that we don't do unless we're in a cabin or we're
On
in a
vacation is what you're
holiday
saying.
mode.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
why?
on vacation. We're in a space where we're told to do it. And even when I think about the way that that was modeled for me as a child, many of the adults who were on that vacation were exhausted. So they were like, yeah, you guys play, we're going to just fall asleep in the recliner, you know? So it's true. It's true. Like that, having that not having the relationship with play in your life on a regular basis can have a really detrimental impact on your energy levels, on your ability to reach for it when you do want to reach for it, you know?
Mhm. A really
Yeah, very
fast
interesting.
way to just incite joy is to find ways to laugh. Whatever that means. A lot most of the stuff I laugh at, people are like, "What are you laughing at?" I'm like, "It's people." I love to observe people. I will sit in the corner and just watch people because many people are so unaware of how ridiculous they are being. And it's funny to me. And there's like a seriousness in life, and this is where, I won't always be the right facilitator for a client. Like someone can have like their life story, like this thing that really impacted them and just made them the way they are, and I just start cracking up because I'm like, do you have any idea the ridiculousness of allowing this to keep running your life? Like
So that's
if I
interesting,
put
right?
a
Because
mirror.
that's about defining ourselves. That's a really
Yes,
interesting question because that's really about defining ourselves and
right. And so
how do I let the events of the past
mhm,
and the current events repetitively sometimes
mhm,
define who I am? And
mhm,
is that the person that I want to be, or is that just the person that my family told me I am, my husband told me I am, my kids told me
mhm,
I am, my world told me I am, whatever it is? I can
yeah,
really relate to that. I think there have been times in my life when I have felt really connected to that sense of duty.
mhm,
You're the one that shows up. You're the one that we can count on. You're the one, right? And it's fine to be that. It's fine to be that as long as
mhm,
that's part of your world and you're still in that relationship to joy within it, right?
mhm.
But to allow yourself to be defined by it and then try to live up to your own expectations, there's a
That's tough.
disconnect there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
oftentimes our reactions to things are borrowed. It's because we saw other people be sad, mad, upset about when X happens or when Y occurs. And I always invite people, I'm like, let's pretend that was the first time you ever saw that. What do you really, where is it really for you? I'm not going to judge you for not feeling whatever you think you're supposed to be feeling about this thing, because that's what you saw your whole life. What is it really?
Mm, mm,
I do this a lot with my son. Any child really that has to mimic empathy or sympathy, like it's terrible. Allow for what they really think first, and then do the teaching of what it means to care.
mm. Very
And
nice.
so that mechanism alone, that defaulted borrowing of reactions to things, it scares people. It's like, oh, but that would be immoral. Oh, that would mean like I'm a psycho or a this or I'm a that. And I'm like, well, uh, that seems like a lot of judgment on yourself. How's that working out for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
not a hole that's going to open up and swallow you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because you don't react or don't feel the same way that you're taught to feel about when certain things occur. So it's a
Nice.
nice way to clean the slate and have access to joy quickly, is to do that.
That's great. That's great. So I want to make sure we go about a half hour here. So I want to start to wrap it up a little bit, but I want to make sure that people have a way to get in touch with you.
Ah,
And so I think, tell us a little bit about how we should get in touch with you.
oh, it's very easy. I could probably plug my name on Google, find my phone number and address quite
There
easily.
you go.
But
There you go.
I've got a website,
So we have your
woundedjoy.com.
website up on the
Yep.
screen, so people
Yes.
can reach for that. It's also in the description. So
Yes.
there's your website, and also which looks like it's got a lot of information about this concept of soul operating system, and sort of can really get into some meat there. And also there are some links here also in the description. So if
Yeah.
you want to just click through, you can do that for Facebook and Instagram. Is there one platform that you're more active on than another?
No,
Okay.
I
All
I
right,
get
great.
pings if someone contacts me and I respond. I'm not like, yeah, I don't
Super.
have favoritism when it comes
Super.
to that.
Okay.
If
All right,
anything, I
good.
appreciate a phone call than anything else at
Okay,
this
well,
point.
if your phone number is there, then they'll call you.
All right,
Um,
sounds
all right. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I want to remind everybody that there are two ways that you can interact with me right now. Donnalynn.blog is going to bring you to all sorts of information about me and free gifts and things that you can participate with. And two podcasts. We're running two podcasts now, which is super fun. This one and another one. And so that's all that information is there. And also, if you would like to sort of self assess, you want to say to yourself, where am I? There are some questions that you can go quite deeply with, or you can keep them very surface, right? So, depending on how much you really want to dig into this question of where am I with myself and what is my relationship to joy? You know, often people will say to me, I say, oh, you know, I work with people about joy, and they say, oh, yeah, yeah, I'm happy all the time. And then you ask these set of questions and you find out that actually there's a lot of potential for more happiness, for more joyousness, right? So this will help you reach for what is the potential there and where am I right now? And that's at joyousonpurpose.com. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It was quite a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Love what you're doing.
Thank you. Okay.